All right, I hereby open the special meeting of the Santa Barbara Unified School Board on March 12th? 10th. March 10th, 2020. Welcome to everybody. Thanks for being here. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody rise and ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Buenas noches, tenemos interpretación al español disponible. Gracias.
Thank you. So just to give an explanation this is a special meeting, and what that means is the board, when we have extra business to take care of, like approving board policies is what we're doing tonight, we schedule an extra meeting. So our regular scheduled meeting will be next Tuesday the 17th. This one, just to give a little Brown Act lesson, special meetings don't include public comment, but we didn't want to exclude voices because you certainly aren't expected to know the technicalities of the Brown Act. So we will have abbreviated public comment today because, again, this is a sort of an extra meeting for the board to really get to some of the work. But we will have a full-blown meeting actually next Tuesday, the 17th, at La Cumbre Junior High to allow for a lot more anticipated voices. So just wanted to explain that as we kick things off. So with that, I will also announce, in addition to Spanish translation, that headsets for the hearing impaired are available. So with that, Dr. Reed, public comment, please. Even board comment isn't listed on a special. I know, a lot of the things that are ordinarily part of a regular meeting are not included per the Brown Act on a special board meeting, so they don't have to.
So we're choosing to do a minute?
Mm-hmm.
So good evening. I'm going to call 3 people up at a time. I'm doing it in the order that I was given, so I'm following directions. But I will say that we're just going to give you a minute apiece, okay? So there you go. So I'm going to read the first 3 and just be ready to line up and continue going. And here we go. Also, just to say that I'm sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm doing it with the intent of saying it correctly, but just know that I'm going to make a mistake. Okay. Eva Maria Catalan, and then we have Cristina Ceballos and Daniela Elias, and I'm just going to add one more, Esmeralda Paris.
Can I start? Good evening, school board members. My name is Eva Maria Catalan, and I'm the youth organizer for Future Leaders of America. And today I'm here with our youth who attend local high schools in our districts. We are here to support the Teen Talk program. The Teen Talk provides facts and accurate information to help teens make healthier decisions on body image, birth control, and gender identity, to name a few. Our students should have the right to learn
30 seconds.
To learn about sex education. As a community, we don't want our teens to be excluded. And that is exactly what the HEART program does. It stigmatizes committed relationships outside the context of marriage in the violation of EC 51933, see lesson 12.43, and also without 2 biological married parents, see lesson 5.4.4. I urge you to think about all the students.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate if when I say thank you, I'm just politely saying it's time to stop. And I thank you for stopping so quickly. And again, I'll say 30 seconds, but you guys, I'm here to hear you.
Mi nombre es Cristina Ceballos.
My name is Cristina Ceballos.
Yo como mamá no estoy de acuerdo que quiten la información porque los jóvenes están informados como cuidarse antes de tener relaciones.
I, as a mom, I'm not in favor of dismissing information because youth have to be informed about how to take care of themselves before having relationships.
para prevenir infecciones transmitidas, como ejemplo, climina, sida y embarazos no deseados. Tener la responsabilidad de usar una protección que no haya padres jóvenes. Es importante que los jóvenes estén informados.
So to prevent infections, transmitted disease, for example, chlamydia, HIV, not wanted pregnancies, and to have the responsibility to use protection so that we don't have youth parents, and it's very important that the youth are informed.
Antes de decidir tener relaciones, que la mujer merece mucho respeto y respetar si ella no quiere tener relaciones. La mujer es valiosa, merece muchísimo respeto y valor.
Okay, so it's important that youth are
30
informed
seconds.
before deciding whether to have relationships. Women deserve to be respected and also respect if they do not want to have relationships. Women are valuable and they deserve a lot of respect and value.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Daniela Elias. I am a sophomore at San Marcos High School. I attended the last meeting, and I'm here to lay out some information about the HEART program and why we shouldn't implement it in our schools. HEART approaches sexual health education through a sexual risk avoidance lens that privileges the avoidance of certain behaviors and the primary tool to protect sexual health. This is supported neither by science nor California policy. California law requires that
30
sexual
seconds.
health education meet the CHYA's mandate. It must provide students unbiased knowledge and skills to protect their health and develop healthy relationships and attitudes concerning adolescent development, gender, sexual orientation, and relationships. Well, HEART cites an article by the American College of Pediatricians, which has been deemed an
Thank you very
anti-LGBTQ
much.
hate group.
Next speaker.
Hi, good evening. My name is Esmeralda Paris. I'm a senior at Dos Pueblos High School. So in TikTok, they explain birth control and the effects it can have on a woman's body, which I believe is really important. I also want to point out that Teen Talk also speaks on the importance of mental health, which is very beneficial to all of us as teens. I personally want to talk about how that many of my peers, including myself, can't learn from our parents what an ideal marriage is due to my parents being divorced, and I know many of my peers have single
30
parents.
seconds.
Which they wouldn't be able to attend the meetings with their students because they're working 2-3 jobs just to be able to pay rent here in Santa Barbara. And so the parents do vote for our school board members. We students are the ones that are impacted by the vote, and we have the beneficiaries of the findings since we are the students.
Thank you. Next, we have Amelia Jimenez, Elizabeth Ceballos, Louis Catalan, and we will end with Yesenia Ramirez Garcia.
Hello, school board members. My name is Emily Jimenez. I'm a junior at San Marcos High School, and I'm here again to inform you how the Teen Talk should not be taken away from the youth. The Teen Talk curriculum was not made to promote sex, but to provide the youth with non-judgmental information so we can make healthier decisions and choices for ourselves. It touches on broad topics of sexual and mental health that aren't always brought up within families, at least not mine. Not every parent graduated from high school, and got a higher
30
education
seconds.
as most of the parents here tonight. These parents do have the ability to educate their children on it, but not many parents have that. It's unfair to have this information be taken away from those who want it. Everyone should have a right to this information to stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Ceballos, and I'm a sophomore at San Marcos High School. I'm here to speak out in opposition to the HEART curriculum. It should not be adopted due to the fact that it is not inclusive to everyone. For example, the HEART curriculum talks about HIV, and it forms an association with gay men and the type of intercourse they have, which is inappropriate and homophobic. This type of propaganda alienates teens who are LGBTQ+, and it seeks to invalidate them as humans. We cannot allow
30
school-supported
seconds.
discrimination against our youth. For this and many other reasons, the HEART curriculum should not be adopted by our school district. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Luis Catalan, and I am a sophomore at Santa Barbara High School. A reason why you shouldn't put in the HEART program as the next curriculum is because HEART promotes stereotypes based on gender. For example, stating that girls are more affected by teen sexual relationships than boys. In lesson 3.4.2 in sexual orientation, for example, associating same-sex relationships with pedophilia in lesson 9.4.3. It fails to be inclusive of same-sex relationships and couples, especially in the context of parenting,
30 seconds.
as required by Code 5/1933. Thank you.
Thank you. Just next in line will be Veronica Gallardo. Then we have Veronica Gallardo twice. Another topic. Are these all three different topics, Veronica?
Jackie, it's 1C7, so that's agendized. And
No, but you, oh, I'm sorry, this was put in the wrong pile.
Yeah.
So you have two different comments.
Yes, but I do want, so I want to thank the board chair for making public comment available. I had a feeling you weren't going to do it, so I will save the fiscal capacity comment to your regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay.
And I will just address the dual enrollment.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you guys.
Hi, I'm Yesenia, and I'm a senior at Dos Pueblos High School, and I just want to talk about Teen Talk and how I would support its implementation into our schools. Teen Talk was designed to kind of be approved by all the standards, such as the California Health Youth Act, and the California Health Youth Act also says that parents must be notified of any of this type of instruction being implemented 2 weeks before, so then parents have the option of being able to opt out their
30
kids.
seconds.
And I believe that if parents find this curriculum inappropriate or not fit, they should just opt out their kids. But that shouldn't mean that this curriculum should not still be available to the general public of students, because it's very inclusive, it's very comprehensive, especially about like marriage and how it's more than just a man and a woman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I want to focus our efforts on improving student access to dual enrollment courses, specifically those that allow for the simultaneous fulfillment of high school graduation and University of California A through G requirements. Santa Barbara USD's decision from last spring are inconsistent with the University of California's articulation agreement with California community colleges and are extremely problematic for our local students, many of which are sitting here today. I would like to request that you allow students to receive high school graduation credit for courses that the University of California recognizes as fulfilling A through G admissions requirements. I'm coming to you as a trustee for Santa Barbara City College, and I represent a large district which encompasses Santa Barbara Junior High, Santa Barbara High School, and many of our local elementary schools. I view this through the lens of cutting down the time it takes students to graduate from college and the cost savings to families and college tuition. The Santa Barbara City College summer schedule just became live, and many of our students and families are currently figuring out their courses. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Jill Rivera, Ann Caston, and Silvia Hernandez.
Good evening. My comments are regarding fiscal planning, and I know that right now we're in conversations regarding a new program called META, and it is a dual immersion program. My questions have to do primarily with costs and allocations of resources, namely what is the percentage of dollars being allocated and spent year to date on this one initiative? And I'm wondering, if does the district have the capacity, time, money, resources to see this through successfully, given the various issues that we have to deal with this year alone? So what is being allocated to support literacy district-wide? Phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. It's been 10 years since the district started Common Core transition, and there still is no curriculum available to teachers and children that supports the 5 areas mentioned above. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm here representing a group of about 16 people who've been working on a proposal for a thorough community school. It matches the idea of a new progressive school in town. And I want to just look at this. It says, we prepare students, the mission here, we prepare students for a world that is yet to be created. This school that we're proposing is to support saving
30
the
seconds.
world that we would like to have when these kids grow up. So the idea is that it's a professional development school that would focus on outdoor education to inspire children's love of the earth, and then focus on ecological literacy and environmental ed. What I'm asking is I could be on the agenda to make a full proposal presentation as soon as possible. The group has been working for about 2 years, and what we'd like to do is
Thank
get on
you.
the agenda to start the school as soon as possible.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Hello, my name is Silvia Hernandez, and I'm here today because it is my understanding that our school district welcomes parents, students, and community members' input. On Monday, on the LCAP meeting, 2 of our members were humiliated and disrespected by being removed from a meeting that was happening. It shocked me, and I am without words just to describe how I feel. It is not the concept that I have of my community, which it
30
takes
seconds.
a village to raise a child. So I am here to speak up. Yes, I'm afraid of retaliation, but you know what? Something has to be done about it because that was not okay, and I don't think that that's what my community is about. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheridan Rosenberg, Moni DeWitt, and James Frank Nur. That'll be the last of the public comment.
Thank you. My name is Sheridan Rosenberg, and actually, Moni and I were the ones that were removed forcibly from that LCAP meeting. Elvia is our dear friend, and another friend attended the LCAP. We were invited by them personally as community members and as really advocates, because I think we really kind of understand our way around this very complicated process. And Moni and I were not there more than maybe 30 seconds before Sean Carey came up to us. I actually thought she was greeting us and going to help us with our headsets because we were quietly sitting in the back of the room. We were threatened that if we did not get up, that we could
Sorry,
either do it
26
easily,
seconds.
difficult way or the easy way. And it was becoming so chaotic, actually, and Moni and I were just shocked. I mean, we just kind of sat there stunned. And we decided to go outside, where then Maria Larios Horton and Dr. Chelsea Guillermo-Juan, the 3 of them blocked the door and basically expelled us from the property. Moni and I did nothing wrong. We simply came to attend the meeting to listen and to learn. Thank you.
I would just like to reiterate that that experience was particularly negative. My motivation for being an advocate comes from a very honest place. My son's needs weren't met here by policies that the board should have in place. They should have some one-on-one. And when I go to the LCAP meetings, it's to make sure that those funds are spent to the high-need students, which this board doesn't do. It goes district-wide. The dual language immersion, I myself a dual language, even 3 if you count Latin, and so I'm not against that, but I don't want that funding coming out of the high needs kids, and I have every right to be at a meeting. They broke my free speech. And you guys should like differences. A difference of opinion is what makes this board better. I shouldn't be treated like a problem. I should be treated like a gift and an asset for my insights, my motivation, and don't throw me out again. That's against the First Amendment. Really bad form.
Thank you.
Hello, Board. My name is James Frank Nur. I would echo what Moni said in terms of the desire to celebrate some diversity in this town. In terms of the sex ed, and I think most of the curriculums, I'd really like to ask that we could make all curriculums open in public. I think it would reduce a lot of the friction and a lot of the uncertainty that's going on. I'd also ask that perhaps rather than a one-size-fits-no-one policy.
30 seconds.
In terms of the curriculums, perhaps choosing one or two which fit the guidelines, and allowing at the individual schools, the teachers, the principals, the parents to decide what they like. And so it would, I think, allow people to have the type of curriculum that they really want. So thanks for this time and for the consideration.
Thank you. We have actually one more. I'm sorry, Joan Viganoci. Joan? We just got the slip? All right. So moving forward. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. She'll be the last public comment before our meeting.
Hi, my name's Jonah Van Yoki, and I spoke 2 weeks ago in support of Teen Talk. I am a product of the local schools and also my husband and son. And again, to reiterate, I was pulled out of health education classes for religious reasons. And I got pregnant the first time I had sex at age 17. And I finally, recently just... I went to college and I just graduated law school and passed the bar. I'm 41 years old, and it's been a really long road.
30 seconds.
And I just am a huge advocate of health education. For example, the last time I was here, there was just a lot of fear that I could feel from the parents who were against health education. And we teach our kids about asteroids and all these things that could possibly kill 8 billion people on our planet. And sex is something we're all going to have to deal with. And that's something that is...
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, that ends our public comment.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our speakers. And I'm going to speak to the last item here, item D, which is our next meeting, just while people are still here, that we are having a meeting at La Cumbra. Amongst other things, we will be taking up the sex ed health curriculum. So that'll be a time when the board is actually deliberating and voting on that. And in anticipation of that, our district office has put out some information about the process, including the fact that the recommended curriculum is available for anyone to see in the superintendent's office, with ability to give us direct feedback either in written note cards or to email us directly. And that's really important. So that's available for the next week. And the HEART curriculum is under review by our staff and by the board as requested by the community. So thanks for the comments on that tonight. I just wanted to be really clear about the fact that we aren't taking this up during our special meeting. You're all welcome to stay for the very exciting board policy reviews that this special meeting is intended for. And again, I appreciate your patience with the limited public comment, but I felt as though that was a nice compromise to let some important voices, especially the students, I have to say, to be heard tonight, even though we are in this special meeting. So with that, we'll go back to the agenda item at hand, which would be action item B1, Human Resource Recommendations, Dr. Becchio.
We do have public comment.
Oh, we do. Excuse me, I'm sorry. We had public comment on
the agenda item 1.
Okay.
Action agenda item 1.
So let's do public comment first on item B1. And we'll stick to our 1 minute.
1 minute policy for today. So we'll have Aaron Bearer. It looks like Aaron's speaking. So. I can clarify. That would help. Yeah, I think, well, as a rule of thumb, we let you speak. We're letting you speak for a minute, but we can't let you speak on different topics.
It's on behalf of Aaron Beer. Our names are separate down there. So there's 5 speakers. I called earlier in the day to confirm that we're able to use our 3 minutes each. We've all presented talking points on this subject. So they said that would be not a 1 minute. So we're all prepared for 3-minute presentation.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we're going to stick to the 1 minute. And it just depends on how many people we have here. So we're going to stick to the 1 minute. So, but you can send us via email the rest of your comments so that we have those to read as well, which is actually a really good idea because it supplements what you're saying tonight. So Deena, then Neftali, and then Cynthia.
Hi, I'm Deena Ferro. I'm the mother of Kyle Ferro, who's in Aaron Beer's special education class at Dos Pueblos. We are here to represent the families of the students and to be the voice of our children who are caught up in the unfairness of Erin being dismissed and forced to resign. We're very disappointed that DP telling Erin she will not be returning next year. Our family's been emotional. It uproots our entire family without explanation and without consideration about how change impacts our children. We are always placing them in environments where they're vulnerable. Mostly, they're nonverbal and they have a need for structure, consistency, and continuity. You will never know the incredible gift it is to our families and our kids when we find a teacher like Erin, who provides all these things. Plus, she challenges our kids, provides a safe, healthy environment, both physically and emotionally, even when she needs to advocate for that. Because her job's not easy. Kyle has behaviors, and that is hard sometimes when you have 10 other students in a classroom to keep everyone safe. She has led an amazing team of paraeducators that have worked hard to be an invaluable support to our kids.
30 seconds.
DP making a decision to let Erin go without any reason, and when the kids are thriving, breaks our trust that DP is putting our kids first. Our kids deserve to come first, and our children's success is the ultimate goal. And Erin has created this success. If office politics and personality clashes are the reason for her dismissal, then shame on the administration for sacrificing our kids for that. Erin is a young teacher who has chosen her career to help our kids and be their advocate. Why are we not helping her navigate office politics?
Thank you.
Helping her grow as a teacher and mentor her.
Hello, my name is Yesenia Martinez. I have a child in a special class, but the letter I'm going to read is from Jonas. He's a parent of Holden. One of the greatest challenges of raising a child with autism is, and I can assure there are many, is being able to trust that our children are receiving the care and safety and the educational environment that they require. These needs are far beyond those of neurotypical children. One cannot imagine the difficulty, stress, and guilt of a parent feels sending their child off to school. A child who has no voice of their own. One cannot imagine, I'm sorry about that. What makes this situation tolerable is knowing that we are leaving our children in the hands of a teacher who has compassion and empathy and is willing to take the time to smoothly transition our children, no matter how long that takes. A teacher who is willing to work with each unique child and try to find the
30
tools
seconds.
to help each child succeed in school. My child has several special education teachers through his educational career, and no teacher has been half as successful as Erin in finding methods that work for him. Furthermore, Erin is extremely sensitive to the fact that we as parents know our children better than anyone else. It truly feels like we are working as a team to find the best way to support our children when we work with Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Cynthia, and I'm a parent. My son is a student in Erin's class, and I am reading on behalf of a paraeducator, Matthew Herman. I was baffled today to learn that Erin Bearer would not be returning. She is a hard worker, and she's always prepared. I'll be brief and describe one situation of many where she offered guidance to me. Earlier this year, a student was acting aggressively toward her and others. I intervened to stop him using CPI. She, as she was being assaulted by the student, calmly took charge of the situation and instructed me on my CPI technique. She knew exactly what to do under pressure and resolved the incident. I'm telling you all, this is difficult. It's hard to think straight in a situation like that, and I've seen her do it over and over. Her classroom is well run, and as paras and students are always on task. Please reconsider. Our school would be a real loss without Erin next year. Second letter from
30
Rob
seconds.
Gordon. I want to voice my concern for the decision to not bring Erin Bearer back as a teacher at Dos Pueblos or another program in the CBU SD after 2019-2020. While there may be some great teachers, I don't know of many others that will extend themselves as far for every student's educational and personal growth. Erin puts every student first without having to be told by parents or admin. The loss of Erin will be...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kylie McGonigal, and I work in B7 with Miss Erin as one of her para-educators, and I'm going to be reading a note from one of our parents of one of our students. I have to skip through most of it, unfortunately, because of the time constraint. As a former educator and having 3 siblings who are teachers, I feel like a new teacher like Erin, whose dream was to teach special ed, should be retained, mentored, and supported. As parents, we have seen nothing but positive impact that Erin has had on our kids. Continuity for this program at DP is so important for our children. DP administrators, please reevaluate yourselves in your decision to not retain Erin Beer. The program has been a revolving door of educators, and now that someone young and enthusiastic like Erin is here, let's try to keep her. If there are areas of improvement, let us be concrete and constructive in our representation of the issues so that they may be addressed. If there are examples of greatness, let us air those out as well so that the learning curve for the new faculty is positive. If it is about learning to juggle administrative duties with teaching, let us pair her with a great administrator or peer who is strong in the administrative aspects. No one is born being great at what they do. They evolve and are supported. When the motivation to be present in the situation like Erin is, half the battle is already won and the rest is worth fighting for.
Thank you. We have Jay Ferno and, pardon? Farrow.
Yeah, I'm the last one.
Oh.
Hello, my name is Jay Ferro, and I'm here on behalf of my son Kyle, who's in Erin's class. When we became aware that Erin would not be coming back next year, all of us were shocked, mad, sad, and of course determined to figure out why. This is what we learned. Number 1, this decision was made by the administrators at DP with no input from the special education department. All of whom we spoke with were shocked and disappointed, and several of them said Erin is a rising star. Number 2, the decision had nothing to do with her teaching ability, her skills, and her success in the classroom, as you heard today, and I'm sure further investigations will show. Number 3, this decision was not made for the best interest of the kids and the students, but what unfortunately seems to be a handful of administrators who had a political agenda. And I can tell you, as a parent, it makes you angry and determined when you hear someone's playing politics with your kids. So today we stand united. And before you destroy the lives of an entire class of special needs kids and their families, before you destroy the hope and trust of a young woman who you all should be so proud of, a rising star, before you destroy the trust and faith of your own special needs department and teachers, and before you impact all these lives, and before this situation gets bigger than it needs to, we ask you not to approve the strong-armed resignation of Miss Beer. The stakes are high. It's time to stop playing politics with our kids. They need stability and consistency. You did a fabulous job finding a great teacher, so let's keep Erin and grow with her, not throw her to the curb, thinking, hoping someone better will come next. Thank you for your time. Every child, every chance, every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, I just want to reiterate, if you want to share your extra materials, or certainly email us. It's always good to get another, perspective in written and also verbal, so thank you.
So we supply, here's other letters, we just didn't have time, but they couldn't come. Do you want to present them now?
You can present them now, certainly.
And then is there a good email address to follow?
All of our emails are accessible online on the website under the board meetings, and we welcome emails.
Is there a point person?
Well, the president is the point person.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you to our speakers, and now we'll move on to this agenda item. Dr. Becchio.
Okay, thank you very much, and good evening, board members. The item B1, the human resources recommendation, this is something that you see every 2 weeks or at every board meeting. It generally appears on consent, so I just wanted to make you aware of that. So we bring forward to you the personnel actions from the last several weeks. They're presented to you on this board action list, and they're presented to you for your approval. Thank you.
Let's see. I'll obviously open it up to the board members with questions and comments. I do have a kind of a protocol question. I'm not sure who to direct that to, but I don't know if we were able to discuss specific people in an open session like this under personnel.
No, I would not be able to discuss specific individuals.
Okay. Okay. So that makes it tricky because I certainly have questions about the individual who is just advocated for by her student and family. That's certainly something I would want to have some more information about, so I'm not sure how we handle that.
How important is it that this decision is made if we were to pull one person out? Can we do that? I don't know.
We have a statutory obligation to approve prior to March 15th. We do not have another board meeting before March 15th.
Okay, so I think that we would need to have a special, we're just piling on the specials these days with all these meetings, but special board meeting, a closed session about this personnel item before the 15th, which I'd advocate for.
Yeah, that would be my question, just have a little bit more information. I realize that we cannot discuss it in open session, but I certainly would want more details on this. And if we need to have a special meeting to make sure that happens, to make sure you're meeting your obligations, I would recommend that we do that, because I'm not ready to move this forward without further discussion.
Right, and can I just add that you're saying that could we do it in a closed session before the meeting, the next meeting, or it has to be a couple of days before? You're saying it has to be by March 15th. What is it?
And so it would have to be before March 15th, and we can't do it today in closed session because we haven't agendized it in closed session. We haven't agendized any closed session because this is a special meeting. So we will have to confer as to when we can convene a closed meeting special just for the board and staff on this item. And I believe we can move forward. I'm getting the consensus from the board. Kate Ford, did you have a perspective?
Just wondering if we can remove that name and approve the rest of the list.
Right.
That's what I was going to suggest. I think we can do that. I think we can amend the motion.
Well, we don't have legal counsel here, but I'm pretty certain that you can approve the list minus certain names. I do want to make comment that there are, on this particular board list, in particular the meeting before March 15th, there are probationary teachers that arrive on this board list that we do have to make decision on before March 15th. If you do not, as a board, those individual teachers have a job with us for as long as they wish to have a job with us. So it's a very critical decision that has to be made.
So I think that I believe the best course of action is to
Ms. Capps?
Yes.
I think we should just pull, rather than pull certain names, I think that's setting precedence for something. If we're going to have a special meeting to discuss it, I think we should do it in closed session and just bring the whole item back prior to meeting your your statutory obligations. I don't feel comfortable pulling one name off to do that. I would rather pull the whole list and discuss it so that we're not setting precedents for in the future. And we've just said we're gonna have a special meeting to make sure that you're not out of compliance. That would be my comment.
But that would need to be very soon, is what you're saying? Yes. Like within the next couple days?
Yes.
If not
That's
tomorrow.
correct.
Yeah.
Otherwise, any probationary teacher on that list, we will be granting them tenure.
I understand that.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Wagner?
So my thought is noticing the closed session and what the guidelines would be on that and our time frame. So perhaps I'd like to propose that before we end tonight, that we'll look into that and see what we need to do in terms of public notification.
Yeah, but most likely, I think I'm looking at Sandra, but I think that we would need it 48 hours, if not 24 hours, to notice it. And just to explain to the public, there's very few things that we can actually meet in closed session about as a board, but personnel is one of them. And so that's why we would be doing this and why we're taking this step to be able to discuss this and ask the kind of questions that I believe all five of us have. So that's the course of action I would like to move forward. Thanks to the board for that consensus. And so we'll, by the end of this meeting, have a decision by staff as to when that closed session meeting can happen on this one agenda item. Therefore, no action will be taken. Any other comments? Can we move forward? Great. Thank you, Dr. Becchio. Second, item B2 would be, do we have any public comment on B2? No. Okay, that is the positive certification of second interim financial report for fiscal year 2019 and 2020. Mr. Tay.
Good evening,
Ms.
board
and Ms.
members,
Preston.
and Ms. Preston is here with me today. We're going to talk about the second interim 2019-20. So I want to start on the executive summary here with just a few highlights down in the middle section of the page. I want to bring to your attention just a few highlights that we want to talk about today. First of all, the general fund operating deficit has reduced from 10.7 to 4.7, which is good news. We also had a reduction, and what made up some of those is a reduction of operating budgets, which is about 2.9 million, and then an increase of revenue of 1.1, almost 1.2. We have our property tax increase on the MYP, multi-year projection, remains at 4%. And then the step and column advance is 1.2%. That's what we use for the multi-year projections. And then I want to point out that food service still continues to require a contribution of $736,000. This does not include the normal indirect we would take, which is about $500,000. So we're looking at about a $3.2 million or $1.2 million decrease from the general fund for food service. We also just opened a PO for $200,000 for the food, so this number will go up by the year end. So I want to move to the state. This is really good news in the state of California, and Governor Newsom has proposing to increase the special education budget by about $100 per average daily attendance, which is our total attendance for the district, not just our special ed kids. This is a big increase for us, and it will equal about $1.3 million, which will reduce the contribution that we provide for special ed. This is not in the budget so far for 2021, and so we will be watching that, but we should know something by May revise, which is about the second week of May. The pension cost and the budget for 2021 for the state budget, there is no relief. There was relief some for 1920, but the budget has the next year's budget has no relief for pension costs. And then again, the food service, I just want to reiterate that we are still anticipating a contribution even in 2021. So Brian, can we go to the slides next?
Can you, before you move there, Mr.
Oh,
Tate?
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So on your question, thank you. So on the food service, so when you say that it's going to continue to do that, is this where it normally would be coming from, or are we supplementing because there's a loss somewhere else?
We're supplementing because there's a loss in food service. Their revenues do not cover their expenditures, and they have no fund balance to cover those expenditures.
So what are we doing to mitigate that?
Lots. You'll hear more on the 17th. I'm going to bring another proposal on March 17th of what we want to do with food service, which you have heard already. But I have more information for you, so I will be providing some more detailed information about that.
You'll be bringing back on that specifically?
Yes, on the 17th.
Okay, thank you.
More to come. So on the slides here, I'm not going to go through every part of the budget because it's pretty self-explanatory. So let's get into the entitlement versus funding. The third slide. There you go. So you saw this slide at first interim, and we continue. The blue line is the entitlement, and the purple line is basically the property taxes. So you can see that the blue line or the purple bars are exceeding the blue line, which means that the state says you're entitled to X, but since our property taxes are larger than our entitlement, that means we are community funded or basically basic aid funded. Those terms can be interchangeable. So this is good news for us because if the state goes into some sort of recession, we don't feel it as hard until our assessed value goes down in our property taxes. So let's go to the next page. This, the green bar is the revenue, the red bar is the expenditures. And as you can see, we were just breaking even in 2017-18. And then in 18-19 and 19-20, we are projected to deficit spends, which means that our expenditures are greater than the revenue that we are receiving. That is not sustainable. We need to make reductions. And even though we've done a good job at reducing the budget for 19-20, we are still projected to deficit spend. But as you see in 2021 and 21-22, that changes a little bit because we have reduced in 19-20, and so therefore those changes also reflect in 2021 and 21-22. So that's good news.
So Mr. J, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you go back? So on your 19-20, that's where you're making a lot of the adjustments this year to reduce that deficit that was originally,
yes,
I don't know, 11 million or so. So do you anticipate fully expending all the expenditures? Or do you anticipate, will you look farther out in the year that maybe we won't expend as much as we anticipated right now?
So every year, as we go through each year, when we go to every budget interim, so for first interim, we have a lot of additions and we have a lot of subtractions because we go through the year and we go, oh, we still haven't hired those 2X. So we reduce the budget. But we also add some people, also especially at the site budget level, sometimes take it out of like supplies and put it into people. So things shift around. So at second interim, we make a big decision. We make a bigger reduction. So we'll go in and we'll say, oh, you know, fiscal, you've only spent 50% of your travel. So we're going to take that 50%. So it's always like a big reduction during the second interim. So the reductions that are projected forward, Lacey will get into that in more detail, but we have declining enrollment. We have been declining for 11 years now at about 200 apiece, as you can see here. Thanks, Mr. Rouse. But I mean, in 11 years' time, we're projected to decrease by 2,000 kids approximately. That's 200 a year. So at some point, that catches up into, you know, staff, reductions in staff. And that's kind of what you're seeing in the multi-years. But if we made conscious reductions, like for this year, we cut travel. All right, so next year, will that travel transform over to 2021, and will we keep it that way? We're planning to. But if something comes up and somebody wants to go somewhere and it's very beneficial to teachers or any staff members, that may go. And, you know, it's a budget. It's a living, breathing document.
And I just have one other question, just for clarification, and if you don't have the answer today, you can certainly come back with, but how does we get into community versus ADA? Does that have any impact on enrollment or our expenditures, or no?
Actually, as this is going to sound weird, but as we decline, can you go back to the revenue? Yeah, this one. So as you can see, the blue line is flatlined pretty much, and that's because the entitlement is getting bigger because of COLAs, like this year was a 3% or next year was a 3%. However, we're declining, and so it has an adverse effect to each other. So that's why we're flatlining. But we aren't measured, we aren't funded any longer about how many kids we have ADA for our big bucket of money. For the little buckets of money like Title I and lottery and things like that and special ed, we do care about our enrollment. But for the big bucket of money, it's all property taxes, so declining enrollment does not have an effect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're declining. So here's our ending fund balance. This is, the orange is unrestricted. The blue is the light blue is our special reserve, and that's our Fund 17. So the orange bars, you can see in 2021 and 2022, they're going in the right direction. This is where we want to go. We want to build our reserve up because at some point there will be a recession and we need to be prepared for that. The purple bar is restricted, and that should be spent every year on the kids, for the kids that year. We receive the money for those kids, we should spend the money on those kids. So that's why you don't see any carryover or any fund balance in the restricted side on the projected 2021 and 21-22. Any questions on that? Okay. Are you gonna do the? You want to do this? Here, I'll let Lacey take over from here. Well, you're still in your budget.
Okay, this spreadsheet is our explanation of the changes that we made to the unrestricted side of the budget for the current year. The rows 2 through 6 are where we have increased the revenue since first interim. So we finally received our reimbursement from the state due to property loss from the Thomas fire. So we added that to our revenue, which therefore it increased. We're expecting a refund from an old CalPERS account that we're going to be closing. That came to the board, I think, back in December. So that's new money we're expected to get in. SELPA updated their funding model, which caused an increase to revenue. And then we're also selling old iPads, which is helping support our iPad program. The decreases, these are just the major ones. We have removed the transfer for turf replacement. We've had a reduction in utility usage, a lot due to the mild winter that we've had before today. We reduced OPEB, which is helping. Meg mentioned before we had a reduction in travel and conference. We've had a reduction in some special education expenditures, mostly due to staffing that we thought we would need this year, but we ended up not needing. There was also a reduction in cost of iPads and laptops, and then the sites reviewed their budgets and saw that they weren't going to be spending all the funds that they got allocated to them, and so they also helped with the deficit.
Lacey, before you leave, so the special education, you're saying that those are positions that you thought you needed, were they filled or already, or what we're doing with those?
So we had some psychologists that we thought we would need, but we ended up not needing. We had a lot of need for coverage last year due to leaves, also with the speech language pathologists. So we anticipated that we would need them this year, but then the need just never produced itself.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wagner. Can you explain more as well? Because I think this is obviously of concern.
Right. We had positions that some of it, primarily it was positions that we had hoped to fill and were not able to fill them. So we had for example, a mild mod position at La Cumbre Junior High that we had hoped to fill that we were not able to. However, we did stay contractually and were able to make that work in other ways. We had hoped to bring in a couple extra school psychologists to help alleviate the load on our school psychologists. We were able to get some out of, we hired a few, and then also we had agencies, but we were unable to hire those extras. And so primarily that's what the numbers are reflecting there. Same with the speech pathologists. So these were really, and we will continue to try to hire for these. We were just unable to this year.
So meaning there wasn't the job pool, applicant pool.
Exactly. And even, I mean, when we have applicants, we're not just, we still have high standards on who we hire. Sure. And we're able to not hire folks who met our standard.
So using this as revenue, so when you're able to hire those folks at the standard at which they should be hired, so will this really be a savings, or that's just going to hold? So what does that then implicate further down the line?
This is just a savings for this year.
So that's a hold in place, or should you be able to hire? Okay.
Well, I just want to add that, so therefore, if we are going to hire psychologists for next year, you'll see those in the adopted budget, extra psychologists or speech language pathologists. Those are not in here. Is that correct?
Well, this is just the deficit for the current year.
I understand, but when you roll it over,
When we get to the MYP, then yes, the reduction is still there.
so that means that it may not be a $900,000 reduction in 2021. It may come back as $200,000, whatever we can fill the position.
That was my question. Okay, thank you.
So the goal being that you want to fill the positions.
Yeah.
Right, key.
If that's what it takes for special ed to run their program, yes.
Okay, so, okay. Just want to make sure that's clarified.
Dr. Becchio.
I also wanted to mention that some of the overstaffing was, for example, if we wanted to be 3 FTEs overstaffed in school psychs, that may not be a need that we have next year because we have a stable workforce already. So, for example, some of that overstaffing, the goal behind it was that we know we end up having someone that'll leave or we come up short, and therefore we'll have someone to be able to still fulfill the IEPs. And so if we see our workforce in those critical and difficult to fill areas that are stable, we may not want to do a 3 FTE overstaffed. We might do 2 or we might do 1. So that could be a reality also that we face. We just won't know until we get a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, I'm still a little just out on that in terms of being really clear what we're doing with that 900,000 to ensure that when you say overstaffed, that's different. Were you doing that on purpose, meaning that you still want to fill them? So that's where I'm getting confused. Either you needed the positions and you weren't able to fill them because we didn't have the quality of the pool, versus what you're saying is that we planned for overstaff. So
We did not plan, we planned for overstaff for this year. So I think what we're getting,
yeah,
of a number of folks talking.
Yes.
We planned for overstaffing this year, and by overstaffing, that's to serve needs that we have.
Right.
Going into next year, we still need to sit down with budget and say, do we need to overstaff school psych? Overstaff. So when we say that, they're not sitting at a desk twiddling their thumbs. There is work to be done. So we've got to sit down and say, what is our funding? What do we need? And where can we go? So that's when John said we got to get farther down the line to make those decisions for 2020, 21.
Okay, so then overstaff means they're filled, not unfilled, right? Because you're saying they're not sitting around. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Right.
So when it comes back to revenue, that it matches what we're saying here.
Right. We were not able to fill those this year.
Okay.
But looking at next year, we've got to decide what our target is for each one of those positions.
Okay.
I think the nature of the questions that I also share with Ms. Sims-Moten is, obviously I'm supportive of reducing our deficit spending, but to see that 1 million out of the 4.7 is from special ed, or 900,000, is disturbing. And so this is helpful information and helpful context, because of all areas, that's not an area in which we need to be trimming from what we understand from the community and the challenges that are just inherent to that kind of education. So that's the nature of the question. I just think it really, we can keep going here, but I just wanted to express my concern for how much that total is and needs to be explained, because otherwise it looks as though there is a massive cut to special ed expenditures.
And I can add that in that number, it also includes a reduction to subs that weren't needed. So at this time of year, we kind of know we only have so many days left, so we may not be spending all of that.
Okay.
There's a reduction in hourly costs.
Mm-hmm.
Our legal fees weren't as high as we expected, and also the settlements were lower.
Okay, knock on wood. Okay. Thank you. Okay, other questions, Ms. Ward?
Mine wasn't really a question, it was only probably at this point an echo of what you guys have said, which is that as much as I love the change in this budget for this year, I don't love that we got there by reducing or not filling special ed positions. And I hope that it becomes a priority for next year to fill them.
Yes, agree. I wanted to make one other point unless anyone else had a question or comment. I just want to add, this is not my role to micromanage, but I've been in nonprofits during deficit spending and budgets. Travel and conferences need to be the first thing to go. So that number to me seems low. Again, it's not my role to determine which conferences and all that, but to me, I just need to express, because we are approving this today, I would be delighted if that number increased.
I just want to put a comment. I appreciate what we're doing, but I think this depth of conversation is really needed so that we fully understand when we're talking about that. So I want to appreciate the work that it takes to do that. And so the questions that may be repetitive is just making sure that we clearly understand with regards to how we're getting to the deficit or how we're reducing the deficit, and at the same time making sure that it's not impacting, those closest with regards to special ed or anyone with regards to in the classroom. So I appreciate the work that it takes to get there.
So we'll move on to
No, that's fine. You're going to move on. I would just I have a question about reserves.
Okay.
Was it in regards to this slide, or?
No. My question, and at some point if you could just answer, is that we're at 5.2% right now. There would be no good rationale for going lower than that, would there?
Maybe we should bring up the multi-year projection. Is that where you're seeing the 5.2%?
I don't know. It's in my notes, but where it actually is, I'm not sure. I think it was in the narrative.
In the multi-year. Where is that?
That's right here.
Too.
So if you can, so that five, yeah, so that's our unrestricted reserve in combination with the Special Reserve Fund 17. We then have a total reserve of 11.7%. So this is the multi-year projection.
It is the lowest of them all.
Yes.
So my question being, we wouldn't really want to get into the habit of being that low. Correct?
In reserves, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And as you can see, we're working on, in the outline years, working on increasing that reserve. So we start with the 1920 budget, or at what it is at second interim. And so we briefly went over some of the changes that we made. So going from 1920 to 2021, like Meg mentioned, we've increased line 3 by around 3%. That includes our property tax. We've actually decreased the federal revenue due to declining enrollment, like Meg mentioned, around the title money. Other state has declined, and that's due to one-time funds that we're receiving this year that we're not going to be receiving next year, like the money for the fires and the money for the PERS account. And then other local is the increase that we're going to be getting for special ed, the extra $100 per ADA. And then a lot of those carry on. So going to expenditures, we've included the 1.2% for the step and column in the salaries, and for the benefits, we've also included the increase in PERS and STIRS. So that's why you see those numbers going up. We have not included anything in regards to negotiations, and we won't update the MYP until the board approves any new collective bargaining agreements. So Right now, the deficit for 2021 is showing, it's on line 12. Am I right? Or I'm not reading that right? 13. Sorry, 13. So we have, we don't have a deficit, but if anything is approved in regards to salaries, then that number is going to change, and then it's also going to affect the number in 21-22. And then our reserve continues to grow, but primarily now just based on interest. There's another tab, Brian, for changes that goes over a lot of what I just talked about. And then if you guys have any questions, we can answer.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Nope.
I have one more thing to
Sure.
say, real quickly. So as we approach our adopted budget, we're already in development for next year's budget. I just want to let you know that we will look at 1920 again in about a month and try to reduce even more. Because with the estimate, what they're called as estimated actuals, that's how we're projecting our actual year to end, which will help or hinder our next year. So we will go down and, reduce the budget any way we can to try to get it as close to what we think is we're going to end the 1920 school year. And then we'll be back in the last board meeting of June.
Excellent. So today's action is to certify this
Yes.
interim report.
To approve
And I
the
think-
interim
Yes, and so I think the sentiment you're hearing from the board is to, as this challenging work continues, to keep the cuts as far away from the classroom as possible.
Absolutely.
And I know that's a value that you share. So with that, I need a motion.
So move positive certification to approve positive certification of second interim financial report for fiscal year 2019-20.
I second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you to you
Thank you.
both. Appreciate it. Okay, moving forward. I think we'll move into our discussion agenda without a break. And I did see some members of the public that have come. This is a special meeting that started at 5:30, so I apologize if that wasn't communicated, but we are moving quite along. This is, in fact, a special meeting to take care of board policies that need to be approved, but because our meetings have been lasting about 6 hours each, this is sort of a makeup meeting tonight, and that's why we didn't have closed session and started at 5:30. So we will move into the business at hand, which is approving board policies, starting with Dr. Wagnick, item C1. I'm sorry, we are discussing them, and they will come back for action in the future. So this is the first discussion of these board policies. Thanks, Dr. Reed. Dr. Wagnick.
So, good evening, board. I bring to you an update on board policy 5131.2, which is bullying. These are, oh, I'm off, but I was using my assistant principal voice, so you can still hear me. This is an update from CSBA regarding bullying. And it's updated to reflect the new law, which is AB 1127, which requires a district to approve an intra-district transfer request for a victim of bullying. And if the district does not have another school with the same grade level, allows a victim of bullying to transfer out of the district, which is going to be a large change for us, and this is a very big topic. So I know that you've had time to examine the proposed changes. I do want to point out they have really, what CSBA has done is take out a lot of the prescriptive components of the policy and state that the superintendent or designee shall develop strategies for addressing bullying. I would like to emphasize to the board that this is really the work that we've begun around social emotional learning, such that students learn empathy and respect and self-awareness and self-management. And so with that, I will open it up to your questions regarding the change in this policy.
Any questions, comments? Ms. Sims-Norton?
Yes, thank you. I just had a comment on, I'm not sure what section it is. I think it's the C 13123, the uniform complaint procedure. That part on the.
Yes, what's your
So
comment?
in that comment, it said, if it designated believes it's in the best interest of the student who has been the victim to be moved to a place, it just kind of feels like the victim has to move as opposed to creating a much safer. That's how it feels, how it reads. I understand why, but it feels like they are being victimized twice by having to leave an environment rather than making the environment for where they can stay safer. I guess the person who's doing the bullying need to leave as opposed to the victim itself. But it's just a comment that this kind of came up for me.
Yes, and this is something that in our work we see, definitely with Title IX cases where there's been sexual harassment and sexual assault. That is not the case. With bullying, we're always going to try to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't go on too long about this, but a big piece is really educating folks about what is bullying. It's
Yes.
something that's severe and pervasive. Unfortunately, kids are kids, adults are adults.
Yeah.
Sometimes we say mean things to each other.
Yes.
Sometimes we look at each other crosswise. The idea is that's not bullying, but we still need to work with students on that. So it is about, is your child safe? Are they no longer safe? And our board policy already says in our transfer that with the written verification by a medical professional, including a marriage and family therapist, psychologist, et cetera, or law enforcement, someone can have a transfer. But I would agree with you that if there's someone who is severely bullying, well, then we're looking also at, we've probably gone beyond interventions and we're looking at a disciplinary case here. So, but I think you do bring up a really important point there that the victim should not have to move.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. That's just what that meant to me when that first came up in terms of how do we do that. And I do appreciate educating around what is bullying, what is this, and those really getting down to what that means. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Dr. Reed?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. So, and when the changes in this policy, you feel that you were already addressing these changes, you said with social emotional learning that you've been putting forward. So this wasn't a surprise, but something that we already have in place, a practice that we're working on.
I would say we're working to put it in place. The presence of CALM in our elementary schools is really about forming trauma-informed schools and bringing tools into the classroom for teachers and for students, and SEL is part of that. There are 1,000,001 anti-bullying, bullying prevention programs out there, and so a much more comprehensive way to address it is through strong social emotional learning. And that's not just happening in elementary school. We're really working. It's a slow process because it's teachers have a lot to do. And so how do we do this without asking them to do more, rather than how can we do it at the same time that we're teaching, working on literacy and math and so forth.
So in other words, is there professional development on integration then? Is that, or with CALM
Next year
integration
is
of
the
the
year
curriculum?
that there is, yes. Our big focus this year, we have 6 sessions on social emotional learning and the social emotional competencies for teachers so that they can understand it as it applies to their own life, with this idea that there's a trickle-down effect or a cascade effect, that then it's just something that they're living and doing and comes out through their teaching. So year 1 of many years of implementation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Board.
Thank you so much. I think that this is a really powerful policy. I know that the CDE recommends that every district have a bullying policy for the boards. It's actually, to me, a really powerful way for the board to take a stand. And once the board of a district takes a stand, then the staff can rightfully devote whatever resources are needed to make sure that it's in place. So I'm really glad that we have this, and to me, it just makes everything that we do that much stronger. So thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, great. Thank you so much. It's just the first reading of that, and I believe that would mean then it would come back on consent for action, if everyone's okay with that. Moving on to item C2, which is the first reading and discussion of Board Policy 5142 on safety. Dr. Wagner.
All right, thank you, Board. I bring to you updated policy on safety. This is updated to add the district's responsibility to provide for the proper supervisions of students at all times that they are on campus and under the protection and care of staff. And so it calls out specifically what those times are: before and after school, during after school programs, morning drop-off, etc. It does not include if a principal is on campus on a Saturday and someone decides to come and skateboard on campus. That's kind of the distinction, is, you know, when we have oversight of students. It also covers an interesting new law, and we'll be putting this into place next year, on student identification cards in secondary, that on the back of those cards, they will have the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline telephone number. And we're also going to, because this is the third decade of the 21st century, a text line. Our students text, they don't call. And so those will be on the back of student ID cards and staff ID cards next year. So your questions or comments?
Any questions or comments? Yeah, Ms. Munoz.
Yes, I wondered about the local, the access line being on there, but I didn't know if that would be a possibility.
Which access line is that?
Oh, sorry, the one from, from behavioral wellness.
I'll look into it. Certainly a local line is important. Yeah, so we'll look into exactly what we have to, it says or a local suicide prevention. So yes, we'll look at what the best one will be to put on for our students.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, I think we can move on to the next one. That's number 3, mobile communication devices.
So this is a new policy put out by CSBA, and it is to address mobile communication devices. I found this very interesting because we do have policy around mobile communication devices, and it addresses much of the concerns that we've been grappling with. I thought of Mr. Rickman a lot as I was reading through this. So the new policy reflects a new law which authorizes the board to limit or prohibit student use of smartphones while at school and while under the supervision. So it officially codifies that. It also talks about reasonable search of students' mobile communication devices. That is also something that has gone back and forth over the years as to the search and seizure laws around student devices. And it says when a school official reasonably suspects that a search of a student's mobile communication device will turn up evidence of the student's violation of the law or school rules, such a search shall be conducted in accordance with search and seizure laws in board policy. And so that is, again, something that's gone back and forth as to whether we can look at students' phones. What I can tell you in anticipation of perhaps a question you might have, it is not acceptable for any staff member to take a student's phone and look at it for no reason in the hopes that they will find something. Just as with any search and seizure, you have to have a reasonable suspicion that you will find something, and so what this is calling out is that cell phones fall under that same, those same guidelines.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Dr. Reed?
So I really want to acknowledge this policy because I know, just in my experience on the board, there was different issues that had come forward around different teachers utilizing the cell phone in different ways, or taking away, or punitive action. So my question is, how are you going to roll this out? Because this is a new policy, this is important information for our teachers, and what is the plan in terms of ensuring that everybody's on the same page and following the same sort of rule structure around it?
I think we need to talk about articulation across the district, but what I can say is, and I have reviewed this a number of times, is I don't see a lot of change to what we're already doing. The search and seizure of the phone was the biggest change that I see here, and perhaps Mr. Rickman can add to this if I'm unclear, or even Ms. Carey or Dr. Ramirez. But schools have put in place practices, but really our overarching protocol is that it's at the discretion of the teacher as to when and where a cell phone is used in the classroom. And so those are, and I see Mr. Rickman going to the podium.
I was just going to say that's true. We've given, the teachers have the final say in the classroom, but in the secondary space, there's actually no reason for students to have their cell phone out since they all have devices. So, you know, when I taught, we would ask kids, hey, take your cell phone out and let's look this up, but there's really no need to do that at this point in time.
Interesting. Other questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to number 4. Dr. Becchio, first reading and discussion of board policies in the 4000 series, personnel.
Pardon, we do have a public comment for C4.
Okay, public comment for C4.
You have, this is Sheridan Rosenberg for C4?
That'll be one of them. Yeah.
Oh, it's not the first?
I don't know what order they're in. It looks like it is in the attachments listed as first, dress and grooming. I'm not sure the order by which you want me to deal with the board policies. We can do dress and grooming. That is one of the 4000s.
Why don't you, let's hear from you and we'll get to it.
So I would imagine that part of this came out of Dan and the Math Academy, and it was probably many years overdue, because I don't understand why we didn't have an anti-fraternizing policy with students long ago, but at least we have one now, and it's a great step forward. This is, I think, a real weak spot, and I think you're going to probably see boatloads of litigation in the future, so I think you need to kind of close the loop, which is, I see a real inconsistency. Many meetings back, you tightened it up that only employees of the district could work for the academies, not nonprofit employees. And that was actually part of the problem with Pablo, is there was no oversight. And so what I see is that you're kind of mixing it. You've got Calm coming in, you have AHA, WOW, and that's another nonprofit, mixing with students, making teachers provide the oversight. Just Communities talking in class, we know that we've had some problems there. So what I would do is just say all employees so that they can fall under these guidelines and you have some proper oversight. Thanks.
Okay, I believe that's it for C4. So Dr. Becchio.
All right, well, we had listed 4 policies, so in the 4000s. Just for a little bit of housekeeping, I do want to pull 2 of them tonight, and here's why. 4119.24 is the maintaining appropriate adult-student interactions, one that was just referenced. We have a board policy on that. We vetted that with our union. The board approved that. It is a really good policy. The CSBA one that came out, the concern I have is that while they are very, very similar, there is a couple spots that I am concerned about that either are not included in the new policy that we thought was important or the union thought was important in our old policy, or vice versa. And so what I'd like to do is just keep the one we have in place with the goal of doing a real solid crosswalk on those two and making sure we have what we want, but we probably will need to change it to the new board policy number and with CSBA so that when we get the updates, we will get the updates on a regular basis moving forward throughout the years to come. So I would like to move in that direction. I just don't want to rush it because we have a good policy in place already. So that's one that I'd like to pull and not deal with tonight.
Which one is that?
That's 4119.24. And then the dismissal, suspension, disciplinary action 4218, I'd like to pull that one too because that is one that I need to shore up with our bargaining agreements and our bargaining units and make sure that there's discussions before they come here before the board. So that did not happen. And so I want to pull that one as well. Okay, having said that, yes.
Ms. Ford, yeah.
I was just thinking that the one that's .26 is very much like the one we already approved too. This seems like all this stuff is, maybe there wasn't a lot of comparison done, because this one says inappropriate employment behavior.
That's the one I referenced in the beginning, which seemed to be very, very similar to the one we've already approved. The issue I have with it is, for example, it does not include drinking in the presence of staff. We included that in our board policy, but the CSBA one does not, and I don't think we should lose that.
I'm just saying that both of them, .24 and .26, are just like what we already approved. At least what we're shown.
2.4 is what we.
2.4 is adult.
Check 2.6. It's the same too.
And
Yeah.
2.6 is employee behavior.
Yes.
You see it?
So both.
I see we have the one we currently have. Let me look at my notes. The one we currently have in place is 2.6.
But we already agreed to that.
We agreed to that and we're keeping that in place.
Great.
That's not going to change.
Oh, so that's on the agenda.
Yeah, that's not going
Just to show comparison.
Right.
Okay, so we won't take a vote on that one.
No, and that one's not going to change. That'll stay in place.
Okay.
Sorry to spend so much time on this, but I just want to make sure that we get the process right and go to our union bargaining units before it comes to you, and that did not happen. So I want to make sure that does. So we're going to pull those down. The two that are left are the dress and grooming. And that one is board policy 4119.22. I'm going to give you two, the major themes in that one, and then I can open it for input from you. This update to dress and grooming reflects a new law, SB 188, which prohibits discrimination against employees for their hairstyles or hair traits. And so that's in the policy. And then the other aspect of this that's changed is the protecting employees' rights, right to appear and dress in a manner consistent with their gender identity, gender expression, or religious creed. And so those are the two you'll find in that board policy. I'm happy to take input on that one.
Do you all want to take this one by one to make it more simple? Okay. Thank you for that introduction, though, and that was my question too, because we did spend a lot of time on the other one that you've included. So let's go to this first one, dress and grooming. If there's any further explanation needed, or just straight to questions, comments, Ms. Ford.
Thanks. I was wondering if there's anywhere that you can direct me to where the professional standards of dress and grooming are described, that they're referenced here.
I'd have to check on the AR on that. There may be an AR accompanying this, and I don't have that in front of me. But the AR probably would be where it more clearly describes that. I could check that and send it to you.
That'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, okay, great. We can move on to the next one.
The next one is, what do you have for the next one? BP. Right, that one I pulled down. Yeah, so then we have BP 1312.1.
Oh, no, I'm
have that?
sorry. Wasn't there the one at suspension, discipline? You want to pull that one as
Yep,
well?
wanna pull
Okay,
that one.
great. So we are.
Sorry for the confusion. I tried to get those out of the agenda so we wouldn't have to go through it, but I was not able to, so.
Okay, that's helpful, though. So we are done with that agenda item. We're moving forward to C5, which is the first reading and discussion of Board Policy 1312-1.1.
So, pardon, we do have another, Sheridan Rosenberg. Did you want to speak to this?
Great. Sorry, it's hard to get my bearings. Sure.
So I mean, obviously, litigation is, I just get it and I know how to do it. So, and what I see is a real gap. And the gap is the complaint, lack of process. So this is it's not a small district, and 65% are the Latinx population. So it's kind of counterintuitive to go up against an authority. And I actually see an opportunity to put in here a different solution, which is an ombudsman, or actually two.
30 seconds.
One who obviously is in the Hispanic community and who is approachable and can be that liaison with the district when there's a real complaint. And someone who actually is sensitive to the needs of everybody else. But what I see here is it goes straight to lawyer, and he's definitely motivated because he makes billable hours. And then that person, can hire a private investigator to do investigations. And I just think that you can kind of skip that step, or at least provide a different step with an ombudsman. And I really think that would be a positive step forward for the district and save a ton of money in legal fees. Thanks.
Thank you. Any context here, Dr. Becker?
Yeah, let me give you a couple
Great.
pieces of information before you give me your input. Board Policy 1312.1. So this policy really reflects the intent to hold employees accountable, so it describes that in the very beginning. It does make mention of, if you look at page 2, it makes mention of both the uniform complaint policy and that is different, that it does deal with acts of discrimination, and also the reporting of child abuse or neglect. So that is contained on page 2. And then the last piece that I thought of was of interest that I wanted to point out is that it does add language about anonymous or confidential complaints, which is a really tricky space, but it for us as employees investigating certain incidents, but it does make mention that we do have an obligation to still attempt to resolve despite the fact that it's an anonymous or confidential complaint, but that it may really hinder our ability to investigate that claim or to take action against an employee if they're found to have done something. So those are the highlights of that policy.
And may I ask before this is updated language from CSBA?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Okay, questions or comments?
Thanks. I actually also thought that the part about what happens during a board meeting is important in this one, saying that if there is a concern raised about an employee during a board meeting, that the complainant shall be informed of the appropriate complaint procedure. And I'd love for us to either have a script that either the board president or the superintendent always uses, because sad to say, we have had specific complaints against employees and we don't say anything, but this makes it clear that we should tell them exactly what to do next.
That's correct, and that statement is on page 1.
Great.
You'll see that in the bottom of page 1, so thank you for pointing that out.
On that same thing, if that complaint comes through public comment by which we don't discuss, how do we then handle that? Because sometimes things come through email, but when we're in public comment, we're listening to it. But if there's a complaint during that time, how do we handle that?
Right. Well, typically what happens at public comment, for example, when I'm listening to public comment, I will write down or get the speaker's name and then make a phone call to make sure we follow up. I think I've had that happen a couple times. So that is something that our cabinet should be doing. But this particularly calls out the if you read the paragraph about board meetings, individual board members or employees, if they're aware of a complaint, they need to inform that person of the procedures. So we're really all obligated to do that.
But it says during the board meeting, right? Are you saying?
Could be during or outside the board meeting. In fact, I think it says both.
It says regarding point.
Yeah, it says during a board meeting or to an individual member or employee outside of a board meeting. So we really have that obligation whether it's here or outside of a board meeting.
Right. So I'm with that. I was just saying in terms of as we're listening. So are you just automatically taking that information, or do you expect us to do that? I just want to be real clear on the process.
Yeah, if we hear that there's some kind of hint of a complaint, at least my practice is to follow up with that individual if it pertains to something that I oversee in my department. So I've had that happen a couple times, and I'll follow up with those individuals. But we can, we can put a script together that is something that the board members could say. There's two policies. There's our uniform complaint procedures, or there's there's this policy. So
I think you want it articulated at the meeting is the point. Yeah. I think we're all in agreement on, I agree with that. I should say. I think I think my Brown Act education dictates that, and you can correct me, that the board president can talk about next steps or some sort of follow-up.
Yes, I just want to be clear what those next steps are.
Yes, so I think that's the request, and I would echo it for a script if a complaint is made during a board meeting, for acknowledgement that complaint will be followed up upon in a way that's adherent to the Brown Act.
Gotcha.
Thanks.
Do you? What I'm hearing is that not necessarily that doesn't need to be reflected in here, but you want that tool at your disposal.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Excellent. Good point. Okay. Other questions or comments? Ms. Ford.
Just as a side note, a lot of districts actually have on a table in the back copies of the complaint procedure. So even the board president could just say, please pick up a copy of the complaint procedure in the back.
Helpful. Other comments or questions on this one? Okay, thank you, Dr. Becchio. We are going to move to the next one, 6, first reading and discussion of board policies in the 2000 series. How many do we have here?
Okay, well, these are relevant at this point in time, I think, you could say. Board policy 2121, we start there. Nobody got it? Yep. So this is superintendent's contract, policy related to the superintendent's contract. Couple highlights here. This hasn't been updated for some time. There have been new CSBA updates since our last update, so it's quite timely since we are in the process of hiring a superintendent and having to create a new contract for that person. So this does a couple things. One is outlines the contract components. You'll see that in items 1 through 12 on page 2 and 3, mostly. It does prohibit the board from deliberating about terms of the contract at any special board meeting. You can do that at a regularly scheduled meeting in closed session, but not at any special board meeting. It does identify the fairly new maximum payout of 12 months rather than 18, which was the old board policy. And then it also specifies that if the superintendent is found to have engaged in fraud or misappropriation of funds or other illegal fiscal activities, that there can be no payout. I believe the old policy allowed for some kind of a payout. It involved an administrative law judge. This one does not allow that. So those are the highlights of the contract one.
Questions or comments? This doesn't, I have a question. This doesn't get into, I will stumble over how to articulate it. The way that we do it currently, which is sort of like a rolling, the contract is approved every year for 3 years. And then does this address it here? Because I have some questions about that.
I think it does. I'd have to just, I think it allows for the extension of a contract, and there's some clause in here. Yeah, number 9. So it says a statement that there shall be no automatic renewal or extension of the contract. So you have to enter into a new contract with the superintendent prior to the expiration of the existing contract. So it doesn't just roll. Yeah. So that's covered in there. 10, that's just our statutory obligation of the 45-day notice.
So this again was predicated that CSBA, there's some change that we're now responding to. I would like to talk about that a little bit more with advice from council, because it has proven to be quite confusing. If anything, just to get more clarification, that, we approve a 3-year contract, but then we approve it every year, and it just.
Well, no, it doesn't say you approve the contract every year. You evaluate the superintendent every year.
That's right.
That's what it says.
Okay, I think what I'm asking for is clarification of what we do so that it's transparent for the public, because I am not even 100% clear on it. And use this opportunity of this new policy coming down from CSBA for us to be all on the same page. I'm not necessarily advocating to change the current practice, but it's hard to explain. And it would be nice to have it even articulated here once we have clarity around it.
Is what I'm hearing you say is you'd like it articulated in this board policy, or do you want me to get some clarity for you from our legal counsel,
Yeah, I'd like
aside from this board policy?
Sure. How about this? A 2-step. I'd like clarity about our current practice, and if it needs to be more specific in this board policy, great. But if not, if this covers it, then that's fine. So I don't want to slow down necessarily the approval of this if there's some time frame that's relevant to this. But I do want more clarity about our contract process, and this is a good time to do it as we're hiring a new superintendent.
Okay. I think hearing that, what I will do is get some clarity to you as a board. And then when this comes back, we can consider whatever it is that your input
Great.
you want to give, and we can bring it back a third time if necessary, if there's changes that you want to make to it.
And so there's no time pressure on this one, other than the fact that we're about to enter. A new superintendent will be hired.
Yeah, but we can get this board policy in place.
Okay.
In time for the new contract.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I was just saying that, in the cross-outs up there, Laura, on that same piece up there, like during the term of the contract, I think that says it for me a little bit clearer, but I hear what you're saying, maybe between the new language and this one, like during the term, that the superintendent contract shall be extended only by the board action and subsequent to a satisfactory evaluation of superintendent's performance. So there's maybe a cross between the two that can maybe make it much more clear in terms of those pieces, because that's clearly the only way that it gets extended is through a satisfactory evaluation and by board action. So maybe we could cross between those two, can make it a little bit more clear.
And I just would like, with that clarification, like what are the practices of other districts as well? Like this sort of rolling, our current practice, is that uniform? It's just a good time to address it as we're entering into this a new contract with the new superintendent. Dr. Reed.
I would just say, if the fact is that we can't be transparent in this moment to really explain the process, then it's really important for the public to understand, and we to understand certainly. So I would support Ms. Capps, is that if we could have it sort of very transparently discussed so that there is no question as to why we are practicing the way we're practicing. And it also would lead to a question of whether we want to keep doing it this way.
Exactly.
If there are practices at other districts, are they, why are they doing it differently than us? And how did this come in place? Not that we need a whole history lesson. It's just to kind of understand if this is a commonality amongst all districts that we just need to explain better to ourselves and to the public.
Good point. Ms. Ford?
Thanks. I do think that possibly it won't require a change in the policy, but it would be really great for us to get from our legal counsel some other examples of contracts, because that's what, to me, that's where the language would be about what the superintendent can and can't do, what the board can and can't do, is in the actual contract itself.
Excellent. Paging Mr. Price. Okay. Anybody, any other questions, comments on this one? Thanks for that, Dr. Vecchio.
Okay, that one I'm assuming would probably come back for a second reading discussion. I'll get you some information prior to that, though, so you can be equipped with that information and make decisions about what you want in the board policy.
Excellent.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, and then turn your attention to Board Policy 2140 up on the screen. This is superintendent evaluation, evaluation of the superintendent. A couple things to highlight here. It outlines that the evaluation process, the goals and objectives are to be collaboratively developed, but it does make mention that the board is the final say in that. And that there be an annual review of the superintendent. I didn't see anything glaring that jumped out at me that I'd want to point your attention to, but I'm happy to take your input.
Dr. Reed.
I just wanted to state that we have actually kind of evolved to not just doing a yearly evaluation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we've sort of reframed it based on CSBA that we are also evaluating in a regular quarterly basis. So I don't know if that should be added to this policy?
Well, if I may clarify, the evaluation is completed just annually, but we don't wait sort of to the end.
Right, right.
And so that there's a quarterly
process,
but not a
not
quarterly
definitive.
evaluation.
Yeah, not definitive with the evaluation, but it's something that we are looking at and having conversations with the board and the superintendent relative to the progress he's making, or she.
Yeah, that should be part of the process, working year-round on it. And then at some point, your obligation is once a year to issue a formal evaluation.
But it's not brought up in this policy, I don't believe.
The annual?
No, the quarterly.
No, but I think you get to, as the board, define what that process is for evaluating the superintendent. If you determine that you want to spend every closed session on some objective, then you, the board, get to do that. This is just calling out that at the minimum, you should have the evaluation once a year.
Yeah, thanks for raising it. I think it's fine to not leave it in policy because it is a process that a future board might want to change, and then they would have to go back and change the board policy, which seems like an extra step.
Yeah.
But thanks for explaining it.
I guess just to be transparent about what we've been doing or starting.
Yep. Okay, other points on this, on evaluation?
Just a last question for the board. I had two others. I'm under the impression that 3 of the board policies I brought to you, I'm going to bring back on consent.
Mm-hmm.
The superintendent contract, I'm going to bring back as a second reading.
Mm-hmm.
Sound good?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Vecchio, with all of those. Now, item 7, first reading and discussion. I believe we have public comment on item 7, which is board policy 6020, parent involvement.
We have Sheridan Rosenberg and Moni DeWitt. These are the 2 I have.
Oh, I have one for C7. Are you C7 as well? Oh, go ahead.
Where is it?
Yeah.
You gave it to us?
You can come
I
here.
gave you 3, and I only spoke on one because of the short, and then this one's for this item.
It's in your public comments.
Start with Sheridan.
So I just think this is another terrific opportunity. I'm so happy to see this up here because one of the things I've learned in the last few months is there's a huge gap between communication with the district and the parents who I think are judged as if they don't want to participate when they just are never given an opportunity because they're not aware of what's going on. So when I just think about an appropriate platform, Parent Square isn't the platform, and I don't even think it's district sponsored. So an online live
30
calendar
seconds.
on the front of the website in Spanish and English that lists all of the meetings that are coming up, especially LCAP and board meetings. It was something that each one of them said, really, we want that one place to go to that we can find easily. Also, things going home in the Friday folders in Spanish and English in paper, because that goes right on the refrigerator. And I think that, yes, each school principal should be responsible, but that is one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've gotten so far. Thank you.
Moni DeWitt, and then Veronica.
Yeah, my comment is just I would like to see a culture that we actually appreciate parent engagement. I mean, sometimes I feel, honestly, that those of us who have a different viewpoint are put down sometimes, even by the teachers or different groups, and I like to reiterate that. I also do know that the communication isn't reaching people. What she said about Parent Square is totally true. The Friday packets, there are people who don't have access to computers, and computers is good because they can go to the library, but that paper form, they count on it every Friday.
30 seconds.
Okay, and participation for LCAP is a big deal. I went to one of the meetings, not the one that I got thrown out at by Miss Carey, which was really a little humiliating. Another tip on, make us feel a little more welcome. But anyway, the LCAP, the money isn't being spent right. I've sent you all stuff from public advocates, and the public should look at this. They're related to the civil rights, and we're not spending it. The stakeholders are actually people who are getting paid that are listed there, and a lot of the people who want to have a voice don't get one. So LCAP, really.
Okay, I want to suggest language to the board policy. The center talks about the parent guardians being notified of their rights. I feel like that's the meat and the heart of this policy. I think something to include, like, for example, and this is all out of Ed Code, a description of the school's responsibility to provide a high-quality curriculum and instructional program in a supportive and effective learning environment that enables all pupils to meet the academic expectations of the school. This is important. We do not have an adopted reading curriculum. It's been 10 years since Common Core rolled out.
30 seconds.
And so adding language that really highlights that parents have the right to participate in the school district's advisory bodies. I know this is in your other policies as I read your serial series, but also parents have the right to examine the curriculum materials of the classes in which their children are enrolled. A lot of the comment you've received in the last year and a half, if this was in the policy, then parents would know, you would create a sense of trust, and the affective filter would go down because parents would know, okay, it's in the policy, I can just go to the school and ask for it. It's really concerning when we don't have what we need for the kids.
That's our last public comment. President Capps.
Thank you. Dr. Ramirez. And thanks to our speakers.
Good evening. Good evening, Board of Education, President Capps. So as you have had an opportunity to review this particular board policy and any potential modifications, I'm just here to answer questions and provide some input. This was basically an update based on CSBA recommendations, as is commonplace with our board policies. The other thing that is important to mention here is that we will need to bring current many of our school compacts and school level parent involvement or parent and family involvement policies. Some of them have been updated, but there are certain language components that make them really ripe for an upgrade. So we will be effectively working through that over the next coming months, and then setting ourselves really for a cycle when we might be able to capitalize on standing audiences so that we can get more input from parents, particularly at the school level. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you for any questions.
Any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Ford.
I like the paragraph about local control and accountability plan where it says that the superintendent or designee shall regularly evaluate and report to the board on the effectiveness of the district's parent, guardian, and family engagement efforts, including but not limited to, et cetera. So this looks like this is CSBA wording, but I was just wondering, do we already do that? I feel like I haven't seen a report like that, but do we do that?
We do internally, and I can tell you that over the last few years, we have greatly expanded programming. We've added staffing in our family engagement unit, and with an eye toward really helping us meet the statutory requirements, things like ELAC, DLAC, things that are important parts of school and district governance. But beyond that, they've also run parent programming. And at the secondary, we have positions that are family liaisons. So if what you are seeking is a more of a comprehensive look at how we are, what efforts are afoot and what how they've materialized, that's something we can certainly look to place on the agenda.
I appreciate that. I mean, that's actually what this says, is that the superintendent or designee would regularly evaluate and report to the board on the effectiveness of these efforts.
Sure.
And I think that's super interesting because obviously we try lots of things. Some of them don't work, some do, and keeping better data, I think, is really a powerful idea.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? I just want to give my observation as a current parent. I mean, it's a challenge, but I'm of the position where it's almost overload, and I just want to commend the staff. I think this week of all weeks, there's 3 community forums in the evenings, plus the school board, extra school board meeting, plus next week. So I know it's a challenge, but my perspective as a parent is that there's so much out there, both written, both email, both text, also paper. And I know that means a lot of work, so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Our staff will certainly appreciate that. And one comment that I would make is, we have really tried to press forward and authentically meet the spirit of engagement, which is not easy because it means it's a moving target for us. But I think when we're talking about identifying any community, no community is a monolith, and there are going to be very, very varying degrees of input, information, and styles. We know certain things do work, and we try to employ those, but ultimately we also know that we're trying to, that people have choice in how they engage with us in return. And I'll just give you a very personal anecdote. As a parent here, I unfortunately am not the most involved in my school's affairs. So if you were to limit that involvement in my school and label it as engagement, I'd probably rate pretty low. But in terms of keeping up to speed on the things that happen, that is quite another topic. And I can also say that for my parents, that was a very different experience, given their background and their experience. So I think we just have to be really thoughtful and careful about making generalizations about any one group relative to some bits of information that we receive.
Thanks for sharing that. Okay, are we okay for this to come back on consent? Thank you, Dr. Ramirez.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along here. We finished our board policies in rather swift order. So we're moving to our last agenda item, which is something we held over from last meeting because it was, I think, 11:15 p.m. So we are now getting to Dr. Wagnick's Student Service Board Report, Part 1. Part 1.
Part 1.
Okay.
Thank you, Board. I'm, Mr. Rouse, thank you. Bringing to you Student Services Report Part 1. This is School Climate and Safety. Part 2 will be attendance. So in the state of California, there are 3 indicators that the state measures. And those are the district-wide suspension rate, the expulsion rate, and then students' self-reported sense of safety at school as measured by the California Healthy Kids Survey. We, in our district, really also want to track 3 other metrics, and those are drug and alcohol offenses, weapon-related offenses, and physical acts of violence, harassment, and bullying. So I don't bring great news to you tonight, for the most part. And I will start by saying that I really believe that there are a number of reasons for that, but I don't understand all of the reasons yet. One is the state of our community and our nation and our world right now. But we've seen a 1.4 rate increase in the past 3 years. So in 2018-19, 4.2% of our students were suspended at least one time. This most significantly has hit our students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, our students with disabilities, and our English learners. And this is very concerning because of the disproportionality and the impact on those students. So disproportionality is an ongoing concern. It is not unique to our district. It is an issue across the nation, but we're doing our work here, and so we can't rest on the fact that it's not unique to us. If there is some good news, and that is that expulsions are at a 4-year low. And I will say that that is a result of a practice, a change in practice that we started about 4 years ago of really only recommending expulsion when it's required or when the student, when the principal really feels that they can prove that the student is a danger to self or others if allowed to remain on the campus. We have also decreased that rate through the utilization of suspended expulsions, and I know that you've seen many of those come through. And what the suspended expulsion allows a student to do is, it really is a restorative approach, because if they complete their rehabilitation plan in the time period allowed, then they're able to clean that off their record and move on and go back to traditional school. And so that's something we are proud of. Let's talk about drugs and alcohol. There has been a 26% increase in suspensions since 2015-16. And I'll talk about the reasons for that in a moment. THC or marijuana and alcohol are most prevalent, with marijuana, THC definitely outranking all others. Prescription medications and narcotics are much less frequently found, though we do occasionally have students who are in possession of prescription narcotics such as Xanax, Vicodin, OxyContin. It's interesting because this is not necessarily indicative of an increased usage on campus. So since 2015-16, students' report of their usage on campus has pretty much been flat. So what they are reporting in terms of their own usage on campus isn't indicating we're having more. 6% of students in grades 9 through 12 said that they had used on campus in the last 30 days, 3.5% of 7th and 8th graders. And here's an interesting one. The actual self-reported rate of heavy usage by 11th graders is down 3% since 2015-16. Now that's not a huge drop, but it's a drop. And so students are actually saying that they're using less. So there are a lot of wonderings about what's going on. What I will say, I promised you I would comment on this. We think that we're actually doing a better job of identifying students who are under the influence, who are using at school, et cetera. And we're doing that without the drug dogs, so there you have it. We're paying attention. I think the presence of the deans of student engagement on campus who are really working with students who have drug and alcohol issues is another reason for that. Violent offenses. There's been a 32% increase since 2015-16. That includes violence, harassment, bullying. So when we say violence, that's also emotional violence as well as physical violence. And those do warrant a suspension when they are severe. There are three rationale for why we believe this is the case. One is, as I've shared with you before, increased gang activity, incidences in the community. We just had one a couple nights ago that was extreme. And the other that I have seen, and I think all of us who work with youth have seen, is that there's an increase in cyberbullying, and then those things that start at home at night or on the weekend, they spill over into school. You have a beef with someone online, you get to school, and there are confrontations. And then also, we did have some reporting errors going on. We needed to clean up how things were being reported in Aries. Mr. Rouse is a taskmaster, because when we report to CalPADS, I can tell you that I bet we're one of the most accurate districts in the state of California in terms of our reporting. And so that's also a part of this, is that we are being very, very on top of reporting incidences, because we do want clean data. We want to know what's going on so that we can improve. Weapon-related offenses, we've had a 41% increase since 2015-16. Many students are carrying knives for their own safety, related back to the unsafe conditions out in the community, related to the current situations with gang activity. These are primarily locking blade knives that are in excess of 2.5 inches. I do want to tell the board that the brandishing of knives is very, very rare. When we see, we have not seen a firearm since I've been in this position. It's 5 years now. I can only remember one firearm since I've been an administrator. Some imitation firearms, pellet guns, airsoft, etc., but primarily it's the locking blade knives. So again, brandishing is rare, and many of these students are carrying them for their own safety. However, we can't have students having weapons on campus for whatever reason that it is. Let's talk, so shifting away from suspension, suspendable offenses into how do our students feel about their own safety? This is typical in that in elementary school, students feel safer than when they're in high school. And it is typical that 9th grade is kind of the year when students feel the most unsafe, they have the riskiest behavior, et cetera. It is an absolutely crucial year. So 85% in 5th grade to 66% in 11th grade. And then I gave you the state comparison there to show you that we are actually higher than the state average, though it does concern me that, 36% of 9th graders don't feel safe at school. That's a third of our students. So our current work and next steps, what have we been working on in 2019-20? The vaping, that's another, I didn't even cover that, but contrary to what some folks have thought, we don't allow students to vape in class or openly vape on campus. We actually have really gone after that, and that definitely accounts for the increase in suspensions. We've been working on alternatives to suspension, such as online modules. We're working with probation on a diversion program for students to keep them off of probation through different courses that they can take. The utilization of in-school suspensions, that's data that I don't have for you tonight, but I will tell you that we have greatly increased our use of in-school suspensions. And a piece of data I want to bring to you next year in this report is the number of days of suspension. So what we're looking at here is suspension, whether it was 1 day or 5 days. I'm looking to get data on how many days have we suspended for, because I really believe that that number has decreased. We're using a program called Alternatives to Violence that's been very, very successful. And that is currently being funded primarily through the Bauer Foundation. Our school-based mental health is ongoing. And then we have what's called a Universal Supports for Learning cadre. 8 of our schools are coming together on a monthly basis to work on developing positive behavior intervention supports, social emotional learning, and other initiatives. And they'll actually be giving a presentation in May that we will invite you as a board to attend to see what they've been doing. And then beginning this spring and moving into next year, we are formulating a work group. We believe it's time to look at our discipline guidelines that the board has set forth, prior board, and update that to reflect our philosophies and our beliefs around how to respond to student behavior. We are going to conduct a thorough root cause analysis around these phenomenon, and then create an action plan to go into effect next year. And with that, I will take your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Agner. Any questions or comments? It's a bit heavy. Yeah, Ms. Ford.
I appreciate your saying this is disappointing. I think it's really disappointing data, and it's hard for me to see the silver lining on any of this, because the state, I think that all of our numbers are sort of outliers. The state's numbers on all of these have gone down, and the fact that we're going up, I feel like it's sort of a, I don't know, it's a serious emergency, I think, for our district, that somehow kids aren't safe and don't feel safe. And I'd love for you to comment on that.
My comment would be that I share your concern very greatly. I think students bring into school a lot of their feelings of being unsafe is out in the community as well. That comes into school. I think it comes down to having classrooms where students feel cared for and loved. Maslow's hierarchy of needs have to be met in order for students to feel comfortable in school. And so, we put restorative approaches into place about 7 years ago. And this is something I've shared openly in other groups. I don't know that I've said it in a board meeting, but we really put the cart before the horse. We put the program in place without, I talk about head, heart, and hand. And we did the hand work, and we had some of the head work, but we didn't have the heart work. And so that's what we're trying to, through this Universal Supports for Learning, is really creating schools where there's a climate where, and I purposely, I'm going to birdwalk here, purposely didn't put individual school data in here. We have schools that are doing better than others, and so we have to look at, why does this school, why do students feel safer here than here, and then work on improving. I think working within our community on some of these bigger issues, which we are doing around the gang struggles, and I work with those young folks. I see them regularly, and I see their CUME folders, and on their CUME folders are all their little photos from kindergarten and first grade and second grade, and I think, I have to wonder what happened. So all that to say, I echo what you're saying. It troubles me greatly as a 45-year resident of this community, and we just need to keep working at it to get better.
Thank you. Dr. Reed?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wanted to acknowledge the work that you have done, Dr. Wagenet, in terms of really coming up with a comprehensive approach, and where we're looking at mental health, and we're looking at all of these different areas of how they all integrate themselves into supporting our students. When you say root cause analysis, it just sounds like root cause analysis. So and you're saying that you're going to come to understand what that is and take action, and you said within the next year. So I'm just curious, and you also up here, you say 2020 plus. So I'm just wondering, what practical measures are you thinking that you might start this root cause analysis to really understand how we can resolve or move forward in a more, positive way, I guess? Or can you answer that? I mean, that's a kind of a...
I think I can. I mean, I can give it a whirl, okay? There are a lot of problems to solve. And we can play whack-a-mole with the problems, or we can identify what are some of the ones that, what's some low-hanging fruit that we've missed that could help? And then really, what are some systemic issues? And we've been working on those. I mean, issues around, we've talked about the groups that are most impacted. And so do we have systemic issues? Do we have bias? Do we have problems with relationships between adults and kids that are exacerbating the problem? What really can we do within the schools? Because we can't change poverty, but we can address poverty. We can't change housing, but we can respond to the needs of students who are, homeless or living in doubled and tripled up. So it's like, what can we really do? What are we already doing? And what are we missing? Maybe we're completely missing something. And so, and a lot of that does go to students' esteem, how they feel about themselves. And so what can we do? And it's a lot of big work. So that's why it says 2020 plus. Did I answer your question, or give it a?
You started the beginning phase of the root cause analysis. So, I mean, the important thing is that there's an awareness that needs to take place, and there needs to be a reflection on the practices that are actually in place and what is working and what isn't. So I guess that's going to need some comprehensive approach as to how you're going to tackle that. And I think that's really important to acknowledge there's this analysis that we have to find, but we really want to start taking those steps to uncover that information.
Right. So the root cause analysis is really asking a lot of whys, and then uncovering the whys and deciding which ones we can go after. And then we'll have to go back and do it again, probably, and back and do it again. So.
Ms. Munoz?
Yeah, so as a community, I know years back we've had this happen with the, increase in gang violence and the pro-youth movement, meetings on Saturdays to address the issues. And I do see it, beyond the school district also. I think, what you're doing is fabulous, and having that conversation, and also involving, the church groups, the folks that are out there that kids are going to on a regular basis. I mean, we just had a meeting a few days ago with, folks that are out, that are out and about, have been through, former gang members that our youth will go to, and just starting that conversation again, because the need is there, the tension is there in the community. And I appreciate, all that you're doing. It is very complex, and then now with vaping and so forth, it's even more of an issue for the teachers and the schools and the principals and such. So I think that, what we can do as a school district and tying that into the community effort is, again, the key. It helped last time, too.
Ms. Sims-Norton.
Yes, so thank you. I echo the comments of my previous board members have said. With regards to the work group, are we including the students in that and getting that student voice really in there and taking a non-traditional approach to what we've done, to what we need to do going forward? Because that's really having to think outside that box, because the ones who are most closely affected with regards to is our students, and certainly then deeper into our families and ultimately our community. So are we thinking outside of that box with regards to in our 2020 work group that brings something, a different view that, again, are we missing something? If we're the same folks the same day or same folks different day, we may be missing something. So how do we then look at bringing in someone else to looking at it from a different way, a different perspective with regards to that?
I think the work group itself, definitely I have my preliminary list of who would, a variety of folks, including students and parents on the work group itself, but also we need to do focus groups, whatever. I mean, that sounds, it's kind of, I don't like that, but we need to, listening groups to sit around and listen to students, and we have plenty of them that we can listen to, and I have had I've been blessed with being able to sit and listen to these students who are most impacted by what we just talked about. And it's real. And so I want other people to have those opportunities to hear what students have to say about what they're experiencing.
And, I was reading something about walking in others' shoes. It's hard to look in others' shoes when yours are so comfortable. So I think where people are comfortable also need to be in those circles, because you don't understand it unless you're at least walking or at least have some perspective on what is going on, and that space, and really creating that space where you can have an honest conversation. There needs to be able to, if you will, controlled anger in terms of that, to really get at that, because I think sometimes when we're listening, are we really listening? Are we listening for what we want to hear? Are we really wanting to listen for what is really being said? There's two different things with regards to that, because I think when we're listening to what we want to hear, then we address it the same way with regards to that. And you're absolutely right with regards to it. It's a community issue, and it certainly has to be with the school district, with that, together doing that. And those are some hard conversations that have to keep happening. We have to, when it feels like we can go no longer, that's when we really have to dig in and stay in the mess, if you will, with regards to that, because this is messy. It's not this is not easy work, and it's not work that's going to get solved. And my great grandmother used to say each generation gets wiser and weaker, because our kids are so they have access to information so much faster than adults with regards to that. So how do we take the day that's what's happening here, and how do we realize that we have weakened in a way in terms of not seeing each other as humans? Being human. I see you, I can feel you while you're doing that. I think some of that's lost, and certainly with the technology and being able to hide behind the technology, then that makes it that much easier to not really see face to face. And we know how important it is to have that human to human contact, and that starts people seeing each other with regards to that. So,
thank you. You're absolutely. It's relationships, and it's being able to listen, and the students have a lot to teach us, and I take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth. Is a good lesson, right?
Yeah. Yep, heard that one too.
If I may, I have a couple clarifying questions. When you talk about the violence, 40% increased, can you give a little more from what to what? Or I don't have to have exact numbers. I just want to get a better sense of what that increase means.
So on...
or how prevalent, I should say, kids taking knives to school is.
I would say in one of our 3 traditional high schools, maybe students are found with knives it could be anywhere from, once a month to 5 times a month on average. That would be my educated guess.
Okay. And my second clarifying question, I have 3. So vaping, I know you see it in the moving forward, but I didn't see it in the data previously. Was that an omission, or was it not asked about?
The vaping, that's reflected in this report is part of the THC and
Okay.
marijuana, but there's also vaping for nicotine, and so those are different measures, and I did not put nicotine. We don't look at that as in our drug and alcohol statistics.
Okay.
Right now.
Interesting. Okay. Could we in the future, or this is coming? This is the state.
No, we can add it because the drug and alcohol measure is our measure. It's not the state's measure.
Okay.
So it's above and beyond what the state requires. We can certainly add it or pull it out separately, actually.
Yeah, I think just given
because it's a separate code
Sure.
violation.
And given what we're seeing with vaping, it'd be useful data. And then breaking it down by, I'm just curious too, if you see any trends with gender or LGBTQ, or in terms of the violence. Do you see, in terms of reporting or even the safety numbers, if you could give me a sense of how, if there's any trends that you've seen in the data, both in violence, but also or I guess I should start with the safety numbers. If you see, if anything stands out to you in those numbers, more women or more, or girls, I should say, or not, or anything like that we should be on the alert for.
I would say that fighting itself is, and I'd have to run a separate report specific to that, but my experience is that is very equitably boys and girls. A lot of the cyberbullying and cyber harassment that leads to fights includes females.
Sure.
For males, it's more either related to gang affiliation or they're just going to settle a beef, and so it plays out in different ways. In terms of safety, we do have that broken down by subgroups, and that's certainly something that I believe when we do our LCAP reporting, that Dr. Guillermo Juan can flesh out. So we'll bring that to you later on in the year.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'd just like to understand if there's different trends that you're seeing. And lastly, I just want to, I appreciate the comments that you opened up with, or that you in this discussion about the root causes, because, and I appreciate that the board, that we've gone in that direction for this conversation, because we know just, in terms of our poverty rate is so high, second highest in the state, and homeless rate of kids, 1 out of 8 kids, not necessarily in our district, but in all public schools in this county. So I was just curious in terms of these results as I'm sitting here. I don't know when we're meeting next with the city council, but this is so important for everyone to understand. Or I'm thinking of the Women's Commission that focuses on women and girls and violence related. I just would hope that we can share this information in a way that's constructive to those who are actually in charge of our housing policy and our poverty issues and our homelessness policies, because these kids, our kids, are the living, breathing examples of policies that aren't working or that aren't robust enough. And then here our schools is where you see the ramifications.
Absolutely, and I do get opportunities to share. I go when I'm invited. Perhaps I need to start asking to be invited, but if the board is inclined to reach out to the community, other agencies and so forth, we can definitely bring them information and slice and dice that.
Sure, and I recognize that that's a workload, but I do, I think that Ms. Ford said the word emergency, and when we have a 40% rise of violence, I think that should ring some alarm bells, not just here internally and with our deans and with our teachers and everyone who cares so much in our district, but also into our community. And I that was reflected in every one of our 5 comments. So I just look to, Cami Barnwell, if there's ways in which, or ways that we can, as a board, engage with these other entities to make sure that they understand what's happening here as a result of things that could be improved in our county and in our cities.
I will take the opportunity to very briefly share that I am meeting with 2 city council members tomorrow, along with Ismael Huerta and Rich Hanna from City Parks and Recs, to do a summer nights program, and it's aimed at bringing youth from different parts of the city together with athletics, so that they can compete on the court and the field instead of out in the community through violence. So I will report back on that once we have it going.
Excellent. The last thing I just want to say is, we're going to be discussing at the next meeting, but this also, food is also a part of this, and I know we're all feeling the pangs of where we're at with food service, but it makes me nervous thinking about this trend of what we're reporting, and then going into a summer where there's potentially less of the free summer meals because of cutbacks or things that we're having to do. So I just want to put food into this mix as well, because it's so essential, and our district has played such an essential role to try to lift up the community in that regard and provide really healthy, free food for those who need it, who are often the statistics here. So.
Thank you, Board.
Okay, that wraps up. Oh, Dr. Reed. Oh, I'm sorry.
We
Yes.
had 2 more comments fly in. So a minute apiece. Moni, please come down, and then Sheridan Rosenberg.
And we would love for you to speak, but in the future, these need to come at the beginning of a topic. I don't want to be out of protocol here, but we do want to hear you. So just they need to, public comment is at the beginning of an agenda item.
Got it.
But we're going forward.
Okay,
Thanks.
so anyway, I do want to speak to the missing piece. For those of us who don't get literacy by the 3rd grade, it can turn it into, you get behavioral changes. And I would ask, maybe when you're collecting your data around these violent issues, do check at the literacy rates, because the school to prison pipeline is real, and when kids feel less than and are struggling and they're not getting what they need, then it does get behavioral. And we can fix it by also changing our reading program. Emily Hanford does great
30
investigation on that. And I would like us to look at that, because it's not a hard choice and would lift up the base, and we would have less kids failing, and do our assessments early so that we don't have problems and lawsuits in high school. Look at La Cuesta. 81 kids, none of them are reaching the state standards. They're at -10, and those are high schoolers. That's not right. That's social justice, and it's about reading. They can't read. It's linked. Look at it. Really look at it. You're missing it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will pick up where she left off. And I'm actually going to be more brutal. I think that the cabinet should be fired. I really think that there is a lot of ill will between these people and parents. I've become friends with these parents, and they are now turning to me to be their voice. And I'm telling you, it's very balkanized and it's unnecessary. I had to pull my daughter out of Santa Barbara High. I didn't want to. I wanted her to be a Dawn, but it's too dangerous. It's too dangerous. And we should have the
30
safest,
seconds.
best schools in California, but we don't. And it's because of this police lineup of people who don't do their jobs well. I'm not saying that they have bad intentions. I really don't. But they don't do their jobs well.
Let's keep things respectful. Thank you,
I'm being respectful. I'm a parent who had to take my kid out of a high school I wanted her to graduate from. That's not fair for me or for her. And I'm telling you, it's what Moni's right. That K through 3, catching them when you can so they can read. That's where you need to start and really focus.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we are ending this item. Thank you, Dr. Wagnick, very much. And I look forward to part 2, and really appreciate it. So I just we have our next meeting, which is an extra meeting. I think if we could just wrap this up right here and now, when we're going to have a special closed session on the personnel items that we didn't address today or didn't vote on today. So Sandra has recommended that we could do it either Thursday or Friday morning and still be in compliant with advance notice, and also get it done in time for Dr. Becchio's, for the deadline that exists. we can do it by email, but, do you want to get in your calendar? I just think for simplicity, it would be nice to wrap this up, and for anyone who might be watching eventually, so both times are good, or both days are good. What time were you thinking, Sandra? I'm putting you on the spot. 7:30 for work schedules? So the options on the table, it would be Thursday or Friday at, I'm looking at you, Rose. What time is ideal to start?
7:30 is good for me, if that's.
Okay. So either morning? Any preference, Thursday or Friday, 7:30?
Thursday.
Thursday? Is that, that works for me. Okay, so 7:30 Thursday morning. Does that work for all involved?
Yes.
Dr. Becchio? Okay.
So 7:30 Thursday
7:30,
morning.
yes.
So I post the agenda tomorrow morning at 7:30.
Yes, so just one
24
agenda
hours.
item,
Yes.
closed session. There'll be
Correct.
no open session, just so that's clear.
To vote,
And so
yes.
no public comment.
No.
Although
Well,
technically,
they can-
technically there
they
is
can comment.
opportunity for public comment on this item, but I believe that we've heard that
That's
already.
correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that and the extra work that means for everyone involved. And then just to reiterate, then our next, this is a lot of meetings in the month of March, in addition to a lot of other things. Tuesday, the 17th is a regular board meeting at 6:30. Again, I think the proposal is for that to be at La Cumbra. I do just want to highlight, I mean, we might be in a different situation with this virus for a big, large gathering. So we're proceeding as that, but it's a day-by-day basis. I just want to flag that. And Tuesday, March 31st is a special board meeting for the superintendent search, which at 5:30, which will be closed session because it's discussing candidates. So we're good? And I believe you wanted that to start at 6 o'clock on the 31st. Is that?
Ideally at 6, but 5:30 is okay.
You tell me. I can ask if we can change it. 5:30 is good for me, but.
That's okay.
5:30 is okay? Okay, I think we've wrapped it up. So item E is adjournment. Call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.